Thank everyone for coming. We'd like the candidates to come forward here on my to my right, so that they can pull numbers for their seating. If everyone could come down here, fill the number. All the candidates will have a number. By now, this thing is going. All right. Once we're seated, we'll start the program with an introduction. Well, first with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll have to do it without a microphone. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First, I will move forward to work on fixing this microphone. I'd like to introduce. Forgive me. These are very high-tech mics. Candidates, please be seated. Please, I have the honor to introduce and to thank the Honorable Gloria Lawler, who many of you may know has served the state and country very well. South Carolina's loss was our gain. When she came here to work and settled in Washington, where she taught for many years and principaled one of the Washington high school? Junior high school in Washington. After that, she served for a total of 18 years as a delegate in the Maryland House of Delegates, and then as a senator in the General Assembly Senate. After that, she was appointed Secretary of Aging for the state of Maryland. We couldn't have done better, have a more experienced and worthy moderator. I ask everyone to work with her, and she's going to work with us. Very quickly, I'd like to introduce the candidates. And this will be in alphabetical order. First, David Anderson. All right. Delegate Kumar Barve. Mr. Will Jawando. Ms. Kathleen Matthews. Senator Jamie Raskin. Mr. Joel Rubin. Delegate Anna Sol Gutierrez, and Mr. David Trone. the moderator will take it from here.
Thank you very much. Happy Valentine's Day. Love is in the air. We certainly want to congratulate the Democratic Club of Leisure World for having this wonderful event today so that we can listen to the candidates. We do have some ground rules, however, and we are going to ask each and every one to please abide by the ground rules. We do have a finite amount of time to finish the forum. Thank you. The ground rules are, all of the candidates, one after the other, will be allowed 2 minutes each for opening remarks. Opening remarks will be 2 minutes. At the completion of your opening remarks, questions from the audience will begin. I think we have the microphone set up on the floor. There's one on this end, down front, and there's one on this end, down front. I would suggest that those of you who are planning to ask a question, if you're seated in the back, if you would move forward, come forward, and that would save a lot of time. If you would begin to do that now, it would be very helpful to us. Each questionnaire is allowed no more than 30 seconds to ask your question. That's not very long, so it must be formulated already. Maybe jot it down so that it is succinct. A question may be directed to a particular candidate or to the panel. However, no more than 2 candidates may respond to any question, and this is at the discretion of the moderator. So if I hear a groundswell that all 8 will have to do it, we'll do it. But remember, we do have finite time. Last but not least, candidates' responses are limited to no more than 1 minute. All right. We are now going to start with Mr. Anderson. And you will begin your opening statement of 2 minutes. We do have a timekeeper.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been many years since I spoke here. The writers covering this race say that all the candidates sound the same. Except for me. Bill Turk of the Washington Post says Anderson is the lone dissenting voice. I think that's right. Here are 5 ways in which I'm different from my opponents. First, I'm the only candidate in this race who was opposed to the Iran nuclear deal. It was not in the best interest of the United States or of Israel. Second, I am the only candidate who has supported the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Third, I'm the only candidate who supports federal funding for stay-at-home mom and dads, as well as federal funding for child care and paid parental leave. Fourth, I'm the only candidate who has stood up for the District 8 citizens in Frederick and Carroll County, especially on transit and transportation issues. The Frederick News Post has said Anderson wants to make Frederick County count. Fifth, I have a distinctive bipartisan Social Security reform package. I think that we should increase the monthly payments by $70 of those seniors, 36% of whom are relying on Social Security for 90 to 100% of their retirement income. These seniors are choosing between food and medicine. I also think that since people are living longer and we have better health care, that we should, over a 10-year time period, push back the age eligibility by 2 years. Now, Will Jawando has criticized me because he says that African Americans have a shorter life expectancy. But Will overlooks the fact that, on my view, African Americans, who represent a large percentage of those 36% of people who are choosing between food and medicine, they would get an increase in their monthly payments, on my view. The bottom line is that in this race, I am the least liberal of the pack, but I am also the most inclusive. I am the anti-establishment candidate in this race. I bring fresh ideas, and I ask for your vote. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Barbe.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. And before I start, let me introduce you to somebody who's very special to me on this day, my Valentine, my wife, Judge Maureen Quinn. Maureen, will stand up. Why am I running? You know, it's important that we look back on how the United States of America created itself into a great middle-class nation. And it's really not that much of a mystery how we did it. After the Second World War, we got serious about the notion of actually planning for the future by training people, by giving people access to college for the first time in their lives. It was something called the GI Bill. The GI Bill is part of the reason we have a prosperous nation, and it's part of the reason, by the way, that we have a Medicare and Medicaid program, which I believe in defending, and that we have a Social Security program, which I believe in defending, and I don't want to make you get older to have to avail yourself of the benefits you paid for. But the trouble is, with our children and grandchildren, with your grandchildren, that's what I worry about. We have no similar plans in this country to really fight the problems of overpriced tuition, of inadequate training, of incompetent education. We need to use the University of Maryland system. We need to use Montgomery College and conduits like that to create a new GI Bill for the next generation. I believe that we have it within our power, if we focus on it, to fill roughly 4 million unfilled jobs in the United States of America. These are jobs that should be filled by Americans on our shores. And I will tell you that if you worry about your children and grandchildren, you're right to do that. That's what the center focus of this campaign ought to be. And you know, it's true, we have to defend the programs that we care about because we've paid into them, but we have to build an economy where people can have jobs and benefit from them when they grow to be my age and perhaps the age of other senior citizens. That's why I'm running for Congress. I want to use my skill as an accountant and as a business person to create those new jobs for the future. Thank you.
Mr. Trump.
First of all, I'm the new guy in town, so I like to say it's great to be here. And thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Emil, also. And thank my wife for coming here to celebrate Valentine's Day with me. A little bit of background as to where I came from. I was born in Cheverly, Maryland, down the street. Both my parents attended the University of Maryland, where they graduated. But I grew up on a farm, about 15 miles north of the district. So it's a different background, but on that farm, we hit some hard times. My dad had a drinking problem, we lost the farm. But we learned a lot of important lessons. From there, I started a business. That business had me and a few employees. And now that business is called Total Wine and More. We're in 21 states this year. We'll have over 150 stores and over 5,000 team members. But the real key is the people. That's the common denominator of what I'm trying to work on. Is what I care about is our people, their kids, their mortgages, their grandkids, and how we move their lives and make their lives better as they move forward. I love this country, and only in this country could you start in a place like we did and move forward with success. At this point, I could invest in a business or I could retire. But I see that there's a real problems in Washington. And what we have there is Congress is run by the lobbyists, by the PACs. And we're taking no money from PACs, no money from lobbyists, no money from corporations, and no donation more than $10. So the only person that I'll be beholden to is the voters in the audience. Thank you.
Gutierrez.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for being here on Valentine's Day and for inviting us to share this day with you. And I think it's most important to thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody not hear me. Well, let me start. My name is Ana Sol Gutierrez, and I'm delighted to be here. And I want to say thank you for having all of us, because I think it's very important to have these opportunities for you to know, to see us, and to know why we're running and what we have done. How are we qualified for being a candidate to represent you in Congress? I am very happy to say that perhaps I'm the only one that is very much part of this community. I am a grandmother, and I am on Social Security. So when we talk about these issues, and I'm sure we're going to be addressing them more in depth, I have the experience of knowing what it means to live on a limited income and to be worried about what is in our future and how we're going to be able to make it through. But I think more than anything for me, it's looking back at all the other people that aren't as lucky as we are. I look about the life that my grandkids will have. What kind of world are they going to have? What must we do today to make that life better? And that is why I want to be in Congress. We have an incredibly dysfunctional Congress, but we cannot allow it to continue that way. We must make sure that we are addressing critical issues about our environment, about our economy, about that agenda of opportunity for everyone. I am the first Latina ever elected in Maryland, and I think we need to give voice and inclusion to our new demography in Montgomery County. Thank you very much.
Mr. Tawando.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. I want to acknowledge my wife, my Valentine, Michelle Jawando, also right here. So thank you for coming, sweetie. We're at a critical time in history. I think a lot of people in this room understand that. You look at Washington, we're more divided than ever politically. It's dysfunctional. You've heard that, you'll hear that today. I've worked there. I worked up there for quite a bit of time for some great progressive leaders. Nancy Pelosi, Senator Barack Obama, Senator Sherrod Brown, also worked in the White House and Department of Education. I've seen Congress work and I've seen it not work. When I stood up in the room in the Senate Education Committee and brought my diverse voice and perspective and unique life experiences to bear on the policy issues we were tackling, whether it was expanding Head Start to the most slots that it's ever been for early childhood education, or raising Pell Grants to the highest levels they've ever been, and lowering student interest rates. All things I worked on, was proud to get across the finish line. We still have more work to do in all those areas. When I spoke, my voice changed the conversation in the room. And for all the diversity in our great community in Montgomery County and Maryland and the country, there's little to no diversity in Washington. And that's not just racial, ethnic, that's age, that's life experience. There's more millionaires in Congress than there's ever been, 53%. So the common working person is not represented. That's my story. That's who I represent. We've got a lot of challenges, whether it's educational opportunity for our kids, so that your zip code doesn't determine your outcome in life. Whether it's supporting and taking care and having stability for our seniors. We know about that more than most. My wife and I live in an intergenerational household. My father, we have 3 young girls, 3 young daughters. My father came down with cancer several years back. He lost his home, lost his job, and we had to move him in. Thank God for the earned benefit that is Social Security. That's allowed him to have some basic standard of living, and I'm going to protect that in Congress. We also need to make sure that the American dream is available to future generations. For the first time in our country history, you ask people if their kids are going to have a better life than them, and they say, no, I'm not sure. So I'm going to go to Congress and bring my life experience. I grew up low income in Silver Spring, lost one of my best friends to gun violence at 12 years old. The same year I got a scholarship to St. John's College High School. So I know about the American dream because I've lived it. I think that's the perspective we need in Congress, and I look forward to the discussion today. Thank you very much.
Mr. Rubin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joel Rubin, and if you see me smiling up here, it's because I'm looking at my Valentine, Nomini, over there. Say hi, Nomini. Thank you. And Nomini is the proud mother, as I am the proud father of 3 young girls. We live in Chevy Chase, and it's really exciting to be here with you today. In addition to the girls, we also live with my mother-in-law, like Will, a multi-generational household, a multi-ethnic household. And I'm really proud of what we're doing as a family, and I'm really proud to be here in our district speaking with you today about the important issues that we're all fighting for. And I have a track record of working at the federal level and getting things done that I'd like to share with you today. Most recently, I was the senior official at the State Department handling the House of Representatives for Secretary Kerry. It was an appointed position in the Obama administration. And my job essentially was to work every single day with House leadership, Democrats and Republicans, both sides of the aisle, all the way rank and file on the core national security issues that we're all concerned about, from terrorism to stopping global warming to getting a nuclear agreement with Iran that stops them from getting a bomb. These were all issues that I worked on a daily basis, and I'm bringing that into this campaign. But I've done more than that as well. I've been a grassroots activist. I started my career in public service nearly 20 years ago after going to Brandeis University for my undergraduate degree, and then went into the Peace Corps. And I served, hoping to bring some wisdom from our country to overseas. What I learned was that with humility, I learned much more there and brought that back with me than I could ever have given. And it's with that service, that humility, that I want to represent you in Congress. We have major fights on the way. We have to fight about retirement security. Social Security could crash in 20 years. We have to fight about women's health. There are people in Congress trying to take away a woman's right to choose what to do with her own body. We have to fight climate change. We have to worry about making sure that the economy works for everyone, not just the wealthy and the corporate CEOs. These are big fights. They're going to take patience. They're going to take strategy. And they're going to take someone and need someone who has a track record of success in getting things done. And humbly I submit that I can do that for you. And I look forward to today. Thank you.
Ms. Matthews.
Thank you so much to both Gloria and Emil and all of you for coming out on this very brisk Valentine's Day. It's great to be welcomed back, and thanks for welcoming all 8 of us to Leisure World. I've had a chance to be here several times on the campaign trail and many more times when I was a television news reporter and anchor for Channel 7, telling your stories, things that you were wrestling with, whether it was the next presidential election or figuring out how we keep Social Security solvent. I was here telling those stories. And I'm running for Congress because, like you, I am just so frustrated by the partisan gridlock we've had in Washington, and particularly on Capitol Hill these past decades. It's so bad there that we now have a Congress where the Republicans refuse to clap when President Obama in the State of the Union says, let's fight a war on cancer. It's so partisan now that they're talking about keeping a Supreme Court seat open for an entire year rather than let President Obama make the next appointment. And we've got to stop this partisan gridlock. And I think I bring broad experience as a longtime news journalist, but also in business where I worked for a good company, but a conservative company as a progressive voice for getting things done and fighting for your progressive values. I'm frustrated that this economy is not working as well as it should for all people. We need to reinvest in education so that all children today have a chance to go to pre-kindergarten, to get a fair start, and that we allow people to go to college without having crippling debt when they graduate. We need to make sure we have fair wages going forward. We need to close the wage gap between women and men, white men, and minorities. We have a huge wage gap across races and gender. We've got to close that. We've got to have immigration reform, and we've got to make sure that we have Social Security, which has been promised ever since the 1930s, going forward. And I know you wrestle with those. We've got to make sure that that check comes, that it covers your expenses, especially at a time when people don't have other sources of retirement income. These are the issues that motivate me to run. They animate my campaign, along with safer communities, fighting for gun control, and I look forward to talking about those issues with all of you here today. Thank you.
Mr. Raskin.
Thank you very much, Leisure World, and happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I'm the state senator from your neighbor to the south, District 20, Silver Spring and Tacoma Park. I'm a professor of constitutional law of 25 years at American University, and I am no stranger to Leisure World. For one thing, I was endorsed by the two Barbaras and by Pauline. That's like winning the Iowa caucuses, the New Hampshire primary, and the South Carolina primary. But I first came here to talk about my book, Overruling Democracy, about Bush versus Gore. I've been back, I counted 7 different times, including with Attorney General Frosch, who's endorsed my campaign, when we passed the toughest, most comprehensive gun safety law in America, including a ban on military-style assault weapons. And I came back when I led the floor fight for marriage equality, and we had support from a lot of the great Democrats right here in Leisure World. And I came back again with a lot of our big environmental legislation, the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and so on. But these are serious times, and we've got to take the kinds of accomplishments that we've gotten done in Maryland to Washington. We could have the best gun safety laws in America right here in Maryland, and we do, but the guns are flowing in from Virginia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. We need to take on the NRA the way we did in Annapolis and get comprehensive background checks passed in Washington, D.C. All right, I did want to, you guys know me because this is pretty much my home away from home. I wanted to introduce my wife, Sarah Bloom Raskin, who's back there, my Valentine. Sarah's had a very exceptional career in public life. She worked for Senator Sarbanes as the banking counsel to the banking committee. She was named by Governor O'Malley to be our Commissioner of Banking and Financial Regulation. She was then named by President Obama to be a governor on the Federal Reserve Board, where her office was between Ben Bernanke and Janet Yellen. That's right, I never thought I was going to even meet a governor of the Federal Reserve Board, much less sleep with the governor of the Federal Reserve Board. And then President Obama, she did so while they're nominated her to be the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury Department. She's the highest ranking woman in the history of the Treasury Department, going back to the days of Alexander Hamilton. So please welcome Sarah Raskin.
You've heard the opening remarks from each of the candidates. We are now going to have an announcement of all of our elected and appointed officials.
Thank you, Gloria. Just wanted to recognize some folks. Senator Roger Manuel is here. Senator Glenn Tattlebaum. Now look at Hank Heller. Hank back there. And representing Congressman Chris Van Hollen is Karen McManus. I missed anyone? I missed anyone? Thank you.
Okay. The ground rules. Those of you who are lined up to ask questions, you have no more than 30 seconds. 30 seconds to ask your question. We are ready. And we're going to alternate. We'll take you first and we'll go to the other side, okay?
Hi there, my name is Paul Bardak. I'm a Democratic activist here in District 19. And I have a question for Mr. Trone, and it's a painful one, but it's one that must be addressed. In recent years, nationally, you've given a lot of money, not only to Republicans, but to right-wing Republicans, and indeed you've done so in races where there were competitive Democratic candidates. What is your nationwide support for right-wing Republicans translate to your desire to get the Democratic nomination for Congress here in Maryland?
That's a great question, and I appreciate that very much. First of all, my business interests are different than my personal interests. So any of those candidates, I have no connection with them whatsoever on a personal basis, but on a business basis. If you want to work with, to get anything accomplished, if you want anything done in the state of Texas, or South Carolina, or North Carolina, and all the things we've gotten done are very pro-consumer, a narrow focus, but you have to work with Republicans and Democrats, and if not, it's foolhardy to do so. That said, I was the largest DNC contributor in America last year. Somebody was #1. I've given millions to the DNC.
It seems that, oh, I'm sorry, my name is Paul Bessel. It seems that in every election cycle, the amount of money that's spent on elections goes up and up to astronomical amounts. Do you think this is good for democracy? And what could Congress do to change it if you think it ought to be changed?
We'll take hands. Raise your hand if you're going to answer, just stand and begin to answer the question.
Paul, thank you for that question, and thank you for your great work on open meetings laws, which we're struggling for in Annapolis. There you are. Yes, this cause has been very close to my heart. I have introduced and gotten past restrictions for corporate disclosure for independent spending here in Maryland. I was the only law professor in America invited to testify by the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee last summer in defense of the constitutional amendment to repeal Citizens United. And this is what we need to do. If we can't get Supreme Court justices to do it, and I'm hoping President Obama is able to get a justice on the court, it would be outrageous if he doesn't, but if we can't get Supreme Court justices to do it, we've got to do it by constitutional amendment. In my campaign, I'm very proud to report, my friends, that we have more individual donors than any congressional campaign in America of a non-incumbent, more than 7,500 individual donors. The vast majority are under $100 contributions, and most of them come from right here in Maryland. Public office is something you earn, it's not something you buy. And I'm very proud of the grassroots campaign that we've been running for the last 10 months right here in the 8th Congressional District.
Thank you, Mr. Wesson.
Yes, just briefly, agree with my wonderful colleague, but we need to also think about who is going to be able to be representing us and who is underrepresented in Congress. If money is going to be the primary force in getting elected, then you know what? Our democracy is going to be weakened. Unfortunately, the media and the establishment look to measure candidates in terms of the money that they raised. I'm proud to say I have won 6 elections here in Montgomery County, elected not by money, but by grassroots and by voters. I still believe that the voters are the ones that count, and that's why I am running a true grassroots, a true Maryland, a true Congressional District 8 campaign, not running with money from outside of our state and outside influences. Thank you.
Mr. Girondo.
Thank you very much. It's a huge issue, Paul, and there you are. Across at this whole table, we have that issue. I'm for public financing. You know, we've raised a decent amount of money. We've raised almost $500,000. In any other race in the country, that'd be a lot of money. In this race, it's good enough for 3rd or 4th, depending on the quarter. But you have to look at who's in Congress and why that is. 90% of our elected officials in this country are white. That's not an accident. It's because the people who have access to wealth, access to connections and power and money are going to be the people that are in Congress under this current system. And that's not right. We need to move to a public financing system. I'm proud that Montgomery County has taken a step in that direction, but that's what we ultimately need. That's the only way, after overturning Citizens United, that you're going to get this. You have a couple people over there that have super PACs. And, you know, so this is we're talking about a system that is completely rigged to advantage a certain small amount of people. And so I would ask you to look past that and look at the message from each of us and see who needs to be represented in Congress, what's not there. And I would submit to you that we need more diversity of opinion, money, life experience, socioeconomic experience, and I think I bring that to this race.
Yes, my name is Mike Tabor. I'm 73.
Restrict what the Supreme Court has allowed, where our voices are minimized by the voices of very few.
I firmly believe we have to overturn Citizens United. It has polluted politics. It has created a mess. And we have to do that by electing a candidate who can win a general election. And I believe that's Hillary Clinton, and I support Hillary Clinton in this campaign. I think I'm unique on the stage in terms of having formally endorsed her, because I think she's going to be able to beat the Republicans. We've got to have a Democratic president. We've got to invest in the Senate so that we get more Democratic senators, and I'm supporting Democratic candidates across the country for the Senate because they will confirm the next Supreme Court justices. And we got to make sure that this court shifts to being a progressive court. So, Democratic president, Democratic Senate, obviously a Democratic House will follow that, I hope. That will help us repeal Citizens United. In the meantime, we've got to try to mount a repeal in terms of a constitutional amendment, but that takes a long time. Folks, we haven't gotten the ERA passed, and we're having a hard time even figuring out how we restart that process to give women equal rights in this country. So I know how difficult that's going to be. So I think the political route is going to be the fastest to that. In terms of Marriott was against Citizens United. They didn't want to put corporate money behind campaigns, but they do believe that PACs work in terms of their employees being able to pool their resources and support candidates that they think will support a good agenda. So Marriott was able, through employee contributions, to support an agenda on ending discrimination of LGBT, the Equality Act, previously ENDA.
Thank you.
To put things behind things like the environment and workers' rights.
Thank you. We have a question here and one last question there. Unfortunately, our time is up and we're going to have to get out of this room. So if you will make your question very quickly.
Kathleen and Will, I wanted to state that the lady here, all candidates are pro minimum wage increase, but when the minimum wage goes up, people on fixed incomes lose. It's a demographic and it's statistics. 10% of 3,000K is very different from 10% of 100K. The question is, what, if anything, would you do about these two issues of the minimum wage really taking a chunk out of those of us who will be on a fixed income? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. One of the first things we need to do is increase Social Security benefits, okay? We talked about that not a lot today, but I'm for raising the cap on income. I'm for making sure that if people want to give it back and not give it. I had a guy who paid for me to go to college and law school, millionaire, great guy. He wanted to give his Social Security check back, wasn't allowed to. I think there's a lot of people, Warren Buffett and others, who would do that, and that would get some more money back in Treasury. But we have to protect those programs, expand them so that you're held harmless. We have to raise the minimum wage because there's a lot of low-income folks that are struggling. But I think one of the ways we can mitigate that is by making sure we lower drug prices for seniors. We heard about Medicare negotiating for drug prices, also expanding affordable care, closing the donut hole, and then also expanding current Social Security benefits. And that would be a couple of ways, but I'd be willing to explore more. There's always these unintended consequences when you get complex federal policy, and you have to be flexible and know how to understand the intersectionality and be willing to listen to folks like you. So thank you for raising that issue.
I think it's a comprehensive package that gets this economy working better for more people and really starts helping the middle class and helps people move into the middle class, which is what this country's been all about. It's the dream we've all had, that our parents had for us and that we have for our children and our grandchildren. The minimum wage is one piece of that, but it's also got to be coupled with having paid sick leave, paid family leave, and you definitely don't see that in a lot of businesses that employ minimum wage workers. So we've got to couple those benefits with it. And we have to make sure that we look at Social Security because so many people today are living only on Social Security. We used to be a society where you had other retirement benefits, other pensions, whether it was a union or a company benefit that supplemented your Social Security. But now we know what's happening every day with 401ks, with the stock market. People don't have that supplemental income. So for those that have only the Social Security benefit, we've got to raise their benefits, and we've got to figure out a way to pay for it. And I also would support raising the cap on higher income contributors.
All right, we have one last question, and we are going to give an opportunity to each of the candidates to answer this question. You have the last question, ma'am.